You did something today that no one saw. It happened in a space so private that even the walls couldn't testify. Maybe a parked car in a lot you didn't mean to cry in. Maybe the cold tile of a bathroom floor at an hour when the rest of the house had gone quiet. Something in you rose. The heat was real, the words were ready, the justification was completely valid. And then you stopped. You folded the words back inside yourself. You chose the harder road of silence, of stillness, of swallowing the fire that would have been so deeply satisfying to release. Nobody clapped. Nobody saw. Nobody even knew the war was happening. But your chest felt it afterward, didn't it? That strange, inexplicable loosening, as if something tied around your ribs for months had simply, silently come undone. That is not a coincidence. That is not psychology. That is the physical echo of a spiritual transaction that just took place between your soul and the God who has been watching every single second. What most people don't understand about moments like that is how much they actually cost. The world celebrates the big visible victories, the speech that silenced the room, the comeback that left everyone speechless, the argument won in front of witnesses who confirmed you were right all along. But the battle you fought today had no audience. There was no one to validate you, no one to say it was worth it, no one to document that you exercised one of the rarest forms of human strength that exists, the power to not react when every nerve in your body was screaming for release. You let the moment pass. You let the other person stay wrong in your silence, rather than making them wrong in front of the world. And that act, that invisible, private, painfully human act, cost you something real. The satisfaction of being right, the relief of the release, the illusion of control that comes with saying exactly what you wanted to say. You sacrificed every one of those things, and heaven wrote it down. There is a language spoken between God and the souls he has set apart, and it is not spoken in sermons or in crowds. It is spoken in exactly those moments. The hidden ones, the costly ones, the ones where no human eye is watching, and the only thing that keeps you from reacting is a loyalty to something deeper than your own immediate relief. That language is called obedience. And when you speak it in private, when you speak it at a price, it does not disappear into the air the way unrecorded things seem to disappear. It registers, it accumulates, it moves things in the unseen architecture of your life that your natural eyes are not yet equipped to see. That is why in the trilogy, The 3 Keys to a Prosperous Life, the link is in the pinned comment, I explain how the private choices you make in secret become the invisible infrastructure of the life that is being constructed for you. Not despite your suffering, but through it, precisely through it, in the exact place where it hurt the most. You have been carrying something in your chest for a very long time, not a wound exactly. Or maybe it started as a wound, but over years it has calcified into something more complex than simple hurt. It is the weight of not being understood, not by strangers, which would be easy enough to dismiss, but by the people who were supposed to be your first mirrors, the family table, the rooms you grew up in, the voices that shaped the earliest architecture of who you thought you were. You sat at that table and felt the specific, precise cruelty of invisibility in a crowd. You know what it is like to be in the same room with people who share your blood and still feel the cold draft of not being seen. Not the dramatic rejection that would at least give you something to name and respond to, but the quieter variety, the way conversations moved around you like water around a stone, the way your insights landed in silence. The way your excitement was met with a kind of practiced flatness that taught you slowly and thoroughly to keep the more alive parts of yourself hidden. That particular loneliness, the kind that lives inside a home, inside a family, inside relationships that are supposed to be your refuge, is unlike any other pain the human body is asked to carry. When you are lonely in a crowd of strangers, your nervous system knows exactly why. It makes sense, it is categorizable, but when you are lonely at a dinner table with people who have known your name since before you could speak it, The confusion runs all the way into your cells. The body does not know what to do with that contradiction, so it stores it in the tightness of the jaw at holiday gatherings, where you must smile for the collective performance of happiness, in the specific tension that arrives in your shoulders the moment you pull into the driveway of a house that should feel like home, but has always, in some corridor of your spirit, felt like a place where you were tolerated rather than truly known. In the practiced way, you learn to make yourself smaller, quieter, less demanding, less present, in hopes that smaller would be easier to love. The dinner table is its own kind of altar, and the silent prayers said over plates of food in the company of people who do not see you are among the most honest prayers ever offered to heaven. Because at the table, there is nowhere to hide. The performance of normalcy must be maintained. The laughter must come at approximately the right moments. The responses must be measured. The version of you that walks through that door and takes that seat is not your full self. It is the edited version, the curated version, the version that has learned through years of social calibration exactly how much of the real you is welcome at this particular table. You have eaten hundreds of meals in that partial state. You have chewed food you didn't taste while your mind was 3 conversations deep in thoughts you knew better than to say out loud. And when it was over, when you finally closed the door to your own space and let the performance dissolve, there was an exhaustion that no amount of sleep ever fully resolved, because it wasn't your body that was tired. It was your soul. The shower became something sacred. Not because it was meant to be, but because it was the one place the performance was fully off, the one place where the water was loud enough to cover the sound, where the steam was thick enough to feel like something close to privacy, where nobody could see the face you made when you finally stopped holding it together. The cry that happens in a shower is one of the loneliest and most holy things a human being can do. It is lonely because you are doing it alone, hidden by water and noise, unable to share it with anyone who might actually be able to receive the full weight of what you are carrying. And it is holy because in that moment of total collapse, when the composure is gone and the strength is gone and the performance is completely dissolved, what remains is not weakness. What remains is the truest version of you, the one God has been waiting patiently to talk to, because that is the only version that isn't too busy managing impressions to actually listen. He has heard every one of those shower prayers, every gasping breath that was too broken to form words, every prayer that was nothing but a cry, every time the water ran cold and you still couldn't stop. He heard all of it, and not 1 second of it was wasted. The house itself carries memory the way the body carries trauma. You can feel it when you walk through certain doors, the specific emotional weather of a space, the residue of years of dynamics lived out within its walls. This is not imagination. This is epigenetics. This is the study of how lived experience writes itself into the body and passes through bloodlines. How the anxiety your grandmother swallowed at her table lives in the nervous system of her grandchildren who never knew her. How the grief your father never processed sits in your chest as a heaviness you inherited without consent. The patterns you were born into did not begin with you. They were running long before you arrived. And the reason you have always felt slightly out of place in your own family, slightly foreign, slightly too much, slightly wired in a frequency that the collective never quite matched, is not because something went wrong in your formation. It is because something went right. You were born into a line that needed interruption, and you were the interruption. You were placed there not to assimilate, but to break the pattern. And breaking a pattern from the inside is the most isolating work a person can be asked to do. The loneliness of the home is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of the testimony. Every prophet who ever carried something new into a system that had grown comfortable with the old was met first with rejection in the house, before the rejection of the world had any opportunity to develop. This is the archetypal truth that runs underneath every generation. The one who is meant to carry something different will be made to feel wrong about that difference long before they are celebrated for it. The place where your depth is dismissed becomes the training ground for the place where your depth will become someone else's salvation. The table where your insight landed in silence becomes the preparation for the platform where that same insight will shift 1,000 lives. God does not waste the place of rejection. He uses it to build the exact type of callus that allows you to carry what is coming next without being destroyed by the weight of it. And so you have been trained in the one school that cannot be found in any curriculum, the school of invisibility. You have learned what it means to persist without applause, to keep going without confirmation, to develop the interior life with such depth and richness that it no longer requires external validation to sustain itself. Most people who are celebrated publicly were never asked to build in private the way you have been asked to build. They found affirmation early and grew up learning to depend on it. But you were denied that shortcut. You were sent to a harder school, and the degree you are earning in that school, the one written not on paper but in the interior of your character, is a degree that no comfortable life could ever produce. You are not behind. You are being forged. Here is the truth that the world does not have the vocabulary to tell you. You are not the problem in the rooms where you have always felt like too much. You are the solution those rooms were never ready for. The very quality that has made certain people in your life pull away from you, criticize you, attempt to manage and minimize you. That quality is not a defect. It is a light. And light, when introduced into a space that has been dark long enough to call the darkness normal, is not experienced as welcome. It is experienced as threat. The person in the room who has made peace with their cage is not grateful when someone arrives who cannot seem to stop rattling the bars. They are disturbed, they are irritated. They say things like, "Why can't you just let it go?" and "You're too sensitive," and "Why do you always have to make things complicated?" And they mean it. They are not performing. The discomfort you cause them is real, because what you carry exposes what they have buried, and buried things resist exhumation with everything they have. This irritation that your presence generates in certain spaces, learn to read it differently than you have been reading it. You have been reading it as rejection, as evidence that you are flawed, that you are too much, that something about the way you are fundamentally assembled is wrong and needs correcting. But what if the irritation is diagnostic? What if the discomfort your light creates in a room tells you more about the room than it tells you about the light? The sensitivity you were told was a weakness is actually a precision instrument, a form of perception that registers truths about a room's emotional environment that others simply do not have the receptors to detect. You feel things before they are visible. You sense the weight underneath words before the words have finished being spoken. You knew things were wrong in relationships long before the evidence arrived, in forms that other people could recognize. That is not oversensitivity. That is spiritual perception. That is a gift so rare and so threatening to systems built on everyone agreeing not to see what is actually there, that the system will do whatever it must to convince you it is a defect. The advice that was given to you cloaked in concern was not always what it appeared to be. You know the kind, delivered softly, positioned as love, framed as something being done for your benefit. I just think you need to be more realistic. I worry about you because you feel things so intensely. Maybe you should consider that you're the common denominator. The cruelty of hidden envy is that it arrives wearing the face of wisdom. It does not announce itself as jealousy because the person delivering it has often convinced themselves it is not jealousy. They have told themselves the story of concern so many times that they believe it. But the soul knows the difference between the feedback of someone who wants to see you rise and the feedback of someone who is trying to manage how high you go. You have felt it in your body, the specific chill of counsel that looks like it is opening a door but is actually quietly closing one. And the tragedy is that you let some of those voices into the architecture of your self-conception. You built walls around parts of yourself using bricks handed to you by people who were afraid of what you would become if those parts were free. As I teach deeply in the material, The 3 Keys to a Prosperous Life, I left the link for you in the pinned comment. This pain is not just personal. It is a pattern that has been operating against your specific type of soul for centuries. The ones who carry something beyond their generation have always been the ones who received the most aggressive attempts at reduction. The ones around them sensed, even without conscious awareness, that if this person is not contained, something in me will have to change. And change is the thing the comfortable fear most. So the architecture of criticism, the subtle invalidations, the performed concern disguising concealed competition, these are not random. They are the pattern's immune response to your presence. You are the foreign body. The system attacks what it cannot categorize. You are not the first to walk this road. Long before you, there was a boy whose coat was the color of his father's love and his brother's fury. They saw on him what they could not produce in themselves, the favor, the dreams, the particular brightness of a person marked for something they could not yet name. And they did what frightened people have always done to the light they cannot stand to look at directly. They threw him into a pit, and the pit was not punishment. The pit was part of the plan. It was the first classroom in a curriculum that would eventually seat him at the second highest throne in the most powerful empire of the ancient world. Before the palace, the pit. Before the promotion, the betrayal. Before the authority, the accusation. Before the elevation, the false witness, the cell, the years of silence so deep it must have felt like being buried alive in the slowness of God's timing. And before the throne, there was a boy who played music that moved a king's madness and went home to brothers who told him he was too young, too small, too irrelevant to belong on any battlefield of significance. The same stone that the builders rejected became the cornerstone. This language keeps repeating across centuries because it is describing a pattern embedded into the nature of things. The ones who are chosen for the weight of what is coming are almost never recognizable as chosen in the rooms where they grew up. The house cannot see it because the house is too close, too invested in the version of you that confirms their existing narrative, too committed to the hierarchy already in place to risk the disruption of acknowledging that one of their own is carrying something that will exceed what any of them imagined. This is not a new story, it is your story. And knowing you are in good company does not make the loneliness smaller, but it does make it legible. It turns the wound into a map. His own said, "Who does he think he is?" His own questioned his authority. His own, the people who shared his family line and his regional accent and his cultural memory, looked at the evidence of what he was carrying and reduced it to arrogance, to delusion, to an uncomfortable disruption of the order they preferred. And yet the demonstrations kept coming. The blind kept seeing. The dead kept walking out of their tombs. Because the rejection of the house cannot stop the reality of what is inside the one being rejected. It can delay the recognition. It can extend the wilderness. It can make the road longer and more painful than it needed to be. But it cannot stop the outcome that has already been written into the design of who you are. The wilderness you have been walking through, the years that felt formless and suspended, the seasons where nothing seemed to move no matter how hard you pressed forward, the months that recycled their disappointments with a consistency that began to feel like spiritual law. This was not abandonment. You need to hear that with your full attention, not just the intellectual layer of your mind, but the deep body knowing beneath it. This was not abandonment. The silence of God is not the absence of God. The delay is not the denial. The wilderness has its own architecture of purpose, and every day you spent in it was a day in which something in you was being built that cannot be built in comfortable, applauded, resource-rich circumstances. The character that is being formed in the fire of your particular waiting is not a character that can be downloaded or shortcut or manufactured in an easier environment. It is specifically the character of the fire itself, pressing into you, removing from you every layer of identity that was borrowed or performed or sustained by external validation rather than rooted in something permanent and internal. Iron does not negotiate with fire. Iron submits to fire, and the fire does what fire does, and what comes out the other side is unrecognizable compared to what went in. You went in with a version of yourself that still needed certain people to confirm your worth. You went in with an identity that was still partially assembled from the raw material of other people's opinions. You went in still trying to be understood by rooms that were never designed to understand you. And the fire burned all of that. Not gently, not symbolically, actually painfully, with the real heat of real losses and real silences and real nights of wondering whether any of this was going anywhere. The fire burned the false scaffolding away. And what is standing now, what is standing in you after the years of that particular burning, is not the same person who entered the wilderness. It is someone who has been proven. Someone whose interior does not require the exterior to confirm it anymore. Now watch what happens when God removes certain things from your life, certain people, certain relationships, certain dynamics that you spent years trying to fix, trying to earn, trying to bend yourself to fit inside. Watch how the removal that felt like loss was actually protection. The relationship that ended and devastated you, the one you grieved so thoroughly that you wondered if grief had a flaw, was not a mistake in your story. It was a mercy you were not yet equipped to recognize as mercy because the pain was too loud for the grace to be audible. The door that closed in your face and left you standing in the hallway wondering what was wrong with you was not a verdict on your value. It was a redirection. God does not waste the closed door. He uses it to make sure that you do not spend the next decade of your life building in a direction that your calling was never meant to go. The danger now, and this is the part that requires your most careful attention, the danger now is looking back. Not the casual glance of nostalgia, but the full turning of the soul toward what has been left behind. The way Lot's wife turned back toward the burning city and was not destroyed by the fire of the city, but by the fire of her own attachment to it. She had already been delivered. She was already on the road out. The destruction was behind her, and still she turned. Because leaving is not only a physical movement, it is a spiritual one. You can walk away from a place while your soul remains there, anchored by grief or regret, or the unresolved need for closure from people who are not equipped to give it to you. You can be geographically free and spiritually imprisoned. The pillar of salt is not a punishment. It is a portrait of what happens to a person who cannot fully release the old fire, who keeps returning in thought, in hope, in the hunger for an apology that is never coming, in the rehearsal of conversations with people who have already shown you exactly who they are. The approval you never received from certain people is not coming. Let that land without trying to soften it. The validation, the recognition, the moment when they finally say, "I was wrong about you. I see now what you were carrying. I understand now what it cost you to be who you are in my presence." That moment is not in their design, and continuing to return to that door, even in the private chambers of your inner life, even in the 3 a.m. rehearsal of how you would finally explain yourself, is not hope. It is the mechanism by which the old fire continues to burn you from the inside. You must turn away. not in bitterness. Bitterness is its own form of attachment, its own way of remaining connected to the thing you are trying to leave, but in the clean, clear, irreversible decision that says, I am not going to let the people who were unable to see me in the past determine the texture of my future. I am not going to keep farming for harvest in soil that has proven it cannot hold what I am planting. The solitude of this season is not a punishment. You need to hear that, especially right now, in the particular loneliness of what you have been walking through, where the exits of certain relationships and the closing of certain doors has left a specific silence in your life that can feel, if you let the old narrative run, like evidence that something is wrong with you, that you are the common denominator, that your depth drives people away, that you are fundamentally designed to be alone. That is a lie. That is the enemy's interpretation of divine process, and it has been whispered into the silence of your solitude specifically because the silence is where you are most vulnerable to believing it. The truth is the opposite. The solitude is the preparation. The quiet is the classroom. The season of reduced noise and reduced company is the season in which God is doing the most intimate and irreversible work in your interior. The work that cannot happen in company, that cannot happen in distraction, that requires the particular quality of stillness that only comes when the performance is completely off and the audience is completely gone. The chains that ran through your family line, the patterns of reaction, the inherited wounds, the ways of relating to fear and scarcity and love and approval that were handed down generation after generation, they stop with you. That is not metaphor. That is literal, biological, neurological, spiritual reality. The moment you refuse to react today the way you have always reacted before, you did not just make a personal choice. You interrupted a generational algorithm. The pattern that your grandparents ran, that your parents ran, that you yourself have been running on autopilot for years, in that one private moment of chosen stillness, you broke its continuity. And broken patterns do not simply restart where they left off. They have to rebuild. They lose their automaticity. They become visible in ways they were not visible before. And what is visible can be addressed. What has been running in the dark can only be addressed once it has been brought into the light of your conscious choosing. You did that today. In one small, invisible act, you introduced a mutation into a generational code. That is not small, that is enormous. The new connections are not coming to the version of you that still needed the old ones to be different than they were. They are coming to the version of you that has been built by the fire of learning to stand without them. The tribe that is being assembled for your next season. The people who will see you immediately, who will receive what you carry without asking you to reduce it, who will match your depth rather than be threatened by it, who will be nourished by your light rather than burned by it. They are being drawn toward the frequency you are now transmitting, and that frequency changed today. When you made the choice you made, in the secret place where no one was watching, you shifted something in the signal you are broadcasting to the world. The people meant to find you are navigating by that signal. And when you react from the old pattern, the signal blurs. When you choose from the new place, from the place of the self that has been through the fire and knows who it is, the signal becomes clear, and the right things begin to move toward it with a precision that will astonish you. Watch the next 40 days. Not with the exhausting vigilance of someone trying to force the harvest by paying obsessive attention to every sign and seed, but with the relaxed awareness of someone who has planted, who knows the ground is good, who trusts that the law of seed and harvest is operating even when nothing is visible above the surface. Watch for the conversation that arrives from an unexpected direction and opens a door you didn't know existed. Watch for the dream that carries a strategy, a clarity, an image of what the next thing looks like before the external evidence for it has materialized. Watch for the moment when you walk into a space that used to fill you with anxiety, and instead feel a strange, inexplicable peace. Not the peace of a situation resolved, but the peace of an interior that has shifted, and the situation is no longer able to determine the weather of your inner world. The financial doors that have been pressed closed are beginning to move. The relational walls that have been rigid for years are beginning to soften, not necessarily with the people from before, but in the category of relationship, in your capacity to receive love without bracing for it to be withdrawn, in your ability to trust without the full-body vigilance that betrayal experience installs in the nervous system. The physical exhaustion that has been your companion through these years, the deep, bone-level fatigue that is not about sleep, but about the energy it takes to carry a calling in a season that has asked everything of you and returned nothing visible. That exhaustion is beginning to lift. Not all at once, not with a dramatic announcement, but steadily, in increments, you will begin to notice that you have more energy than you had last month, that the morning feels less like a siege, that you are beginning, cautiously, tentatively, but actually beginning, to be curious about what is ahead, rather than only braced against it. The calling is stepping into clarity, the thing you were made for, the assignment that was encoded into you before your family's dysfunction got to you, before the world's voices wrote their edits over the original text of who you were designed to be. That thing is clarifying. It is becoming legible. You have glimpsed it before, in moments of unusual aliveness, in the spaces where you were doing something that felt like it was drawing from a deeper reservoir than ordinary effort draws from. Those glimpses were not accidents. They were previews. They were God giving you enough of a sightline to keep walking towards something you could not yet fully see. The full picture is assembling. The pieces that seemed disconnected, the years of study, the seasons of suffering, the gifts that seemed too specific to be useful, the experiences that seemed too strange to have happened to anyone else, they are beginning to resolve into a coherent image. And when you see it fully, you will understand why every single part of the path was necessary. Not a day was wasted, not a scar was accidental, not a door that closed failed to be part of the architecture of where you are going. You are not at the beginning of your story, though certain voices in your life have needed you to stay there. You are at the turning. The wilderness has a last day, and it is closer than the exhaustion has been telling you it is. The victim season is ending, not because all the circumstances have resolved, not because the external evidence has fully shifted yet, but because you have shifted. You responded differently today. In one private moment of costly, invisible, unwitnessed obedience, you became someone new, and the life that is being built for someone new is a different life than the one that was being built for the person you were before. That is the mechanic of transformation. It does not begin with a changed circumstance. It begins with a changed response. And the changed response happened